Well, New Hampshire and Iowa get big headlines every 4 years, holding the first in the nation primary and caucuses. But then comes Super Tuesday, where candidates and resources fan out in a dozen or more states, especially across the South. And some analysts think the front-loaded calendar actually gives candidates like Donald Trump a boost this year. So how did we even get to this? How did the election calendar evolve? I'm joined now by Doug Wead, presidential historian and former senior White House staffer for President George W. Bush. It's nice to have you back in the program, Doug, because
Thanks,
as I mentioned in the tease, we talk about Super Tuesday like it's, oh yeah, Super Tuesday, of course. But Super Tuesday is a product of recent history. When did it start and why?
Yeah, it started because southern states wanted more of a say in who the respective nominee would be of their parties. They were the electoral richest region in America. There were the big 7 states, but most electoral votes in a region came in the South. But it didn't really happen until Republican Party officials and Democrat Party officials pushed it. I call Governor Chuck Robb of Virginia the father of Super Tuesday. He wanted a more moderate Democrat Party, and that's why he pushed it. It didn't work out. Jesse Jackson actually won many of the states in Super Tuesday 1988. It moved the party to the left. And Republican establishment figures said, hey, an outsider can win Iowa by shaking enough hands, but an outsider will never win Super Tuesday because it costs too much money and they have to have a ground game that only the party can give them. So both parties created this Frankenstein monster that has slipped its bonds and it's now roaming the countryside doing the very opposite.
Well, and just to give folks a perspective, at the very first Super Tuesday, when Super Tuesday, the term was first used in 1976, then in the 1980 election and beyond, it started to pick up steam, and you had more states. In fact, at one point, I'm just looking down at a list now, you had 21 states voting on Super Tuesday, 25 in 2008, so it's gone up and down. We're seeing on this screen Ronald Reagan. Talk to us a little bit about the dynasty that some say Super Tuesday launched after Ronald Reagan.
Yes, in fact, the Reagan dynasty, too, that was 1976. Incumbent President Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan split Super Tuesday. That was the prequel for Reagan Revolution and his changing of America and the world. But March 8th, 1988 may be the most consequential Super Tuesday in American history. George H.W. Bush had lost the initial early round contest in Michigan. He came in 3rd in the Iowa caucus February 8th. I actually walked George W. Bush, his son, the future president, to his room that night in Des Moines. He was sick, and I waited in his bedroom till he almost went to sleep. Then I walked down to the lobby of the hotel, and there was Doro Bush, the daughter of the president. She was in despair. Everyone was saying her dad was going to quit and become the president of Pearl later. But the next week, he won in New Hampshire. March 5th, he won in South Carolina. And March 8th, he won Super Tuesday, and that launched the greatest family dynasty in American history. 2 presidents and the governor of Florida and Texas, and it almost was stillborn. It almost didn't happen except for Super Tuesday.
Wow, what a story you tell. And we'd love to talk to you more about some of your personal experience, Doug, because it sounds like you've had quite a journey over the last several years. Just taking a step back and looking at Super Tuesday and looking at those prophecies of an outsider can never win Super Tuesday and what Super Tuesday really means for either side, how do you see it and how it applies to this year's election cycle?
I think this is fascinating. Now, I'm neutral, but as a historian, you got to love Donald Trump because he's so interesting, and he's kind of poked the nose of the national media. For all of their contempt of religion, many in the national media are more legalistic and more intellectually stifling than any religion could ever be. So here's a candidate who defies political correctness. I mean, give me a break. Gay lives don't matter. Native American lives don't matter. People dying of AIDS don't matter. People who are victims of sexual abuse don't matter. Tell the people dying of cancer and hospice services they don't matter. This is an insult to Dr. Martin Luther King and to many African Americans to impose this type of language that the national media has done. Here comes someone who defies political correctness. And I think in 100 years we'll look back and many people will see that some in the national media today are like doctors who used to bleed patients. It's ridiculous.
So do you believe
he's hit a chord.
So do you believe Super Tuesday carries the same weight as it did several, you know, and as we look back on some of those elections that launched dynasties, you say, and put the country in a different direction than perhaps some thought it was going in? Do you believe that Super Tuesday holds that same power in our time as it did, let's say, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it will be definitive tonight. I'll put it to you this way. If Donald Trump wins most of the states tonight on Super Tuesday, even if the party establishment is able to somehow pull off a victory for someone else at the convention, the nomination won't be worth anything because the people will have perceived that it has been stolen. So I do think that Super Tuesday is going to be definitive. Tonight will be definitive, whether people favor that or not. And as a historian, I'm just enjoying the ride. And it's a hoot.
Well, you've made the observations about the previous races where it has been that tipping point for some of the campaigns, even when it was thought that some of these campaigns might be over. Doug, it's great to have your perspective, and we look forward, of course, to the results tonight and it being in the history books as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna.